Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tarude Gatere and today we're going to be talking about sex. So the inspiration of this video came from watching a YouTube video done by a Kenyan couple, and they were talking about their experience with celibacy. And what I loved about the video was that it was coming from an authentic place for them. This was them discussing their experience with sex and the decisions that they made. But there were certain things in that video that felt a bit triggering for me, and that's not on them, that's on me. And so I had always really wanted to do a video on sex, and I feel like that video just brought some clarity to me about what I wanted to talk about. And so that's what this video is going to be. I'm not shading anyone, there's no hate, there's nothing like that. It's just I wanted to share my experience and share what I think about how we think about sex as a society, as a community, and how I feel like we can be better about things. Just my opinion. I'm not in any way saying that anyone should think the way I do or do as I do. It's a very personal decision. I grew up as a Christian. I think I've mentioned this before. And I mean, first of all, growing up, you know, us guys, TV started at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon on weekdays, and I think at 1 on Saturdays. But generally, we didn't have the amount of information that's available to kids these days. And I mean, I see like the information that my niece has availability to. She's turning 17 this year, and it's just like, my goodness, us guys had nowhere close to that kind of exposure, nowhere close to that kind of information. Like, yeah, I didn't really know much about sex apart from like in primary school when we did home science, and there was just like how a baby is made, you know, there was here and there just things. Like I remember there was this book that I think my mom gave me called Growing Up for Girls or something like that, and the way it describes sex, it was just like this clinical experience where a man has an erection and he penetrates a woman. It was just like, oh my god, what is this? Who's penetrating me? Like, it was so scary. Really, really scary. And then when I became a teenager and growing up, even before I became a teenager, so I am generally a very sexual person, and this didn't start like just the other day. This started even before I was a teenager. I think I was about 12, and I started to feel things, and I'm like, oh, okay, what's that about? And so I discovered my body when I was 12. In other words, I discovered masturbation, and for me it just felt like it was such a natural thing. I didn't at first feel like it was something bad or something that should be shameful or anything like that. But as I got older in the church, you know, church, guys. Not everybody's experience is like mine, but my god, I feel like that was one of the most, like, okay, so church is where I learned a lot of criticism, judgment, and shame, and a lot of that was surrounding sex. And so when I started to, you know, you get to the age in church where now they start talking to you about sex, and all that it was basically, the bottom line was, wait until you're married. It was always don't touch, don't kiss, don't do this, don't do that, just wait until you're married because sex is for marriage. So it was just like this thing that you could not do, and if you partook of it, then my god, that was just like, you've sinned against God. And because I really didn't want to, like, when it comes to spirituality, I'm a 100% person. I dive into it, and so I was so into being the best Christian that I could be. But then here is this thing that feels so natural to me that I just wanted to do because it's like my body is asking for it. It wasn't even really asking for sex, it was asking for touch and pleasure and those things. And I was just like, how do I do this? How do I navigate these feelings and pleasing God? And so it was like a battle within myself for a long time. And then I got to about 17 and I fell in love for the first time, and this guy was like my first love, and it was a beautiful experience. And I ended up having sex with him when I was 18. I left the church when I was actually about 17. I wanted to experience having fun, and it felt like in church wasn't that much fun for me, to be honest. Maybe it was also the churches that I was going to, but anyway. So I ended up leaving the church and what they call backsliding, and then I ended up falling in love and having sex with this first love of mine, and it was just like the most romantic, beautiful experience of my life. Like, I can't even believe it was that, because it felt like the, you know, storybook kind of things. It was just, I felt respected, I felt loved, I felt cherished. He cared about my pleasure, we discovered each other's bodies. Like, it was such a good experience. And I was like, this was supposed to be the thing that is the most evil thing in the world. Like, I just could not wrap my mind around how that experience could be a bad thing, or like God didn't want me to have that experience, you know. So anyway, I dated this guy for like 4 years. For those 4 years, I stayed away from the church, and then during that relationship, I went through a really bad depression, and coming out of it, I came out of the depression to what I felt like I wanted community, I felt like I wanted fellowship, so I went back to church. And this time was very different, because at least when it came to sex, I mean, I didn't even last long in the church. I think I was there for like 2 years, but 2-3 years. I mean, I formed, one of the best things about church, though, I will say, is that I formed such beautiful friendships, some of which are still there today, and that's one of the best things that I got from it. But in the church, it was different this time, because I had experienced what sex could be, and so even though I took a vow of secondary virginity, which lasted 9 months. That's the longest I've been celibate since I had sex, by the way. Like, since I was 18, that's the longest time I have been celibate, and I was so proud of myself. But yeah, so I knew what sex was by then, and I was just like, you guys, it's not shameful. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's not, and you can feel love and respect and safety and all these beautiful things without being in marriage. Like, so at some point it stopped making sense for me, because I'm like, I mean, no, God doesn't feel like he's this big guy sitting just waiting for me to, you know, slip up and have sex, and then he judges me. Like, it felt very normal, very spiritual, very, very wonderful. And so I couldn't like just get to the same place, I couldn't get to the same shameful place that I had been in before. I had friends who are also going through stuff, because by that time we were like in our early 20s, you know, you're starting to get your first tastes of independence, and I mean, there were people who were sexually active while they were in church, you know, but then there were a lot of people who had hang-ups. Like, I remember, funny story, I made out with a couple of church boys, and it was interesting to see how many of them felt so much shame when it came to like sexual activity, because it wasn't even like sex, it was just like kissing, you know, like we're just making out. But I remember even one of them at some point was like immediately after we finished like kissing, he's like, let's repent. I'm really grateful for the experience that I had with my first love, because it allowed me to feel sexually liberated, and so I didn't carry on a lot of hang-ups that I saw even later on with people. Even now, I still see with some people who grew up like I did in the church. I feel like it robs them of the experience that could be so beautiful. So anyway, I left the church, and in my 20s, I just explored, I just tried things, I enjoyed stuff. Like, it was just a beautiful, sometimes not so beautiful, but mostly wonderful experience of just being a sexually active woman. I only speak about Christianity because that's what I've experienced. I can't speak for other religions, and I don't feel like it's Christianity that's even the issue, although I do have some issues with it. I feel like, even for the most part, it's like institutions or people who, the way they interpret Christianity, or the way they carry it, or the way they express it, that can be a little troublesome. And I remember one of the things, the time that I got back in the church after that relationship, I remember getting a lot of shame as a woman who likes to dress up. I used to love dressing up when I was in my early 20s, and, you know, makeup and clothes and stuff like that. And to me, it didn't feel like it was like scandalous. But I got shamed. And in particular, I remember one of them was actually a pastor's wife who shamed me, telling me that, you know, my cleavage is causing my brothers to stumble, which was so funny, because first of all, my boobs are enemies. And then, like, to me, that just felt like such an attack, because I was like, fine, you can have a dress code for church, and I guess that's the prerogative of the church to do that, I get it. But why is it my responsibility to care for my brother? Isn't it better to teach men not to be animals who will see a woman's breasts and just immediately get confused and not be able to handle themselves? And for this to come from a fellow sister, like a woman who I was looking up to as like a mentor, because she was one of the pastor's wives, and then this is just like, I was just like, wow. There's certain things that I don't agree with when it comes to this topic of sex, especially in the society that we live in, and how sex is portrayed. And first of all, I don't believe that celibacy is for everyone, and that is proven over and over again. I mean, first of all, this has been no secret for generations and generations. Celibacy until marriage, or abstinence until marriage, is not really an effective message when it comes to sex, because people are going to have sex. How many times have we seen that happen? Even with our parents, how many kids are born like a month after your parents' anniversary and you're the same age as the number of years that they've been together, But even beyond that, just look at society. It's even the threat of hell doesn't stop people from having sex. So for me, I feel like it's a bigger conversation. Like, first of all, marriage doesn't guarantee anything. Marriage doesn't guarantee that you're going to have an amazing sex life. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be respected when it comes to sex or otherwise. It doesn't guarantee that consent is going to be observed. Like, there's so many things that I think we heap on marriage as this ultimate goal. But then when it comes down to it, it's not really the holy grail that we think it is. And I feel like even beyond talking about abstinence or celibacy or whatever, let's talk about stuff like consent. Let's talk about stuff like, whether we're being respectful of each other, whether we're caring about each other's pleasure. Is it a pleasurable experience? Like, are we really exploring everything that sex has to offer? Or marriage is not, to me, the holy grail that we think that it is. It's not automatic that just because you waited until marriage that it's going to be this beautiful experience. And I'm not saying it can't, but I've had stories of it not being that kind of experience, of consent not being respected, of pleasure not being considered. I feel like the conversation is so much bigger than wait. I mean, as long as you're not hurting anyone, as long as you're ready for sex, and by that I mean like the consequences that come with sex, that's something that I even tell my niece. As long as you feel safe and heard and like you matter, like you're present in the experience, then I don't care if you have it when you're 18 or when you're 35. Like, as long as you're in a healthy place within yourself and you're expressing it in a healthy way with another person. The other thing that I don't agree with is that sex is shameful at all, in any way, shape or form, as long as you're not hurting anyone and it's not with a minor. Like, sex is beautiful, sex is wonderful, it's to be experienced, especially with yourself. I actually feel like masturbation is something that I would encourage people to experience and explore, because first of all, it's the safest sex ever. It's just you and yourself. And also, it teaches you so much about your body. You learn about what pleases you, you learn about what you like, and so even before you've invited somebody else into your space, you already have experience with yourself. I like that in some societies, masturbation is really accepted. It's just like a part of being human. I love that because it's a wonderful thing. And for me, I just feel like if God didn't want masturbation to be, He wouldn't have given us hands that can reach places. Don't come for me, guys. Don't come for me. Safest sex in the world. Do it. Love yourself. Go love yourself. In fact, go love yourself right now. The other thing that I don't agree with, and this one, it comes from such a core place. Breathe, Taruri, breathe, okay? A woman does not give herself away by having sex. A woman does not alter herself by having sex. A woman does not lose any part of herself by having sex. And this applies to men also. But sometimes I feel like this message is biased and directed mostly towards women, because there's this idea of, I don't know if it's as strong anymore, but I know that in my time, I sounded so old when I said that, in my time. In my time, it was a very strong message that we were given. Like, your virginity is supposed to be this beautiful present that you give to your husband on your wedding night. And it wasn't that, I mean, the guys were told to wait too, but there was an element of, well, guys are guys, their urges are different from women. Okay, first of all, no. And then nothing can alter a woman's respectability or her worth, and especially not a man. And I feel like this message is so dangerous for the women, but also for the men, because we're giving them a sense of power that's not theirs. That's too much. That's not realistic. That's not right. That's not healthy. Because, I mean, this explains why men feel like they have a right to women's bodies or a right to our space. No wonder consent is not something that's always observed. Because if a man can be told that he has the power to alter a woman's worth, then can you imagine what that subconsciously translates to? like he has power over the woman automatically. And so, I mean, for me, this one is just like, I can't even. These are just a few of my thoughts that I wanted to share. I feel like there's a lot of sexual shame that we carry within ourselves, and I would love to address that at some point, you know, maybe in a future video, just talk about the ways to heal sexual shame, or the ways to embrace your sexuality, which doesn't even have to mean having sex, by the way, but there is a way to embrace and access and express your sexual energy that brings pleasure and creativity and juiciness to your life. And that's my video, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and wherever you are in the world and whatever it is you're doing, I'm sending you so much love, and I wish you a beautiful day. Bye.